Kyle here from All Media Reviews. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Please leave a comment below. I'd really appreciate that. Anyway, it's here to do another albums of the year. Kind of making my way through the early 70s right now. 1973, which was a really big year. You know, it seems like it was sort of the peak of progressive rock, and jazz fusion was coming to and so on. It was a really big year, and I have 36 titles here. You know, a lot of these I know, a lot of these I only vaguely know. Try to get through this as fast as possible, but this is kind of my concern about going forward. I'm not doing the top 10, how long this is going to take. So anyway, number 36, Billy Joel's Piano Man. I know best for the title track, of course. I don't know if it was his debut album. Anyway, number 35, and I have a lot of physical copies, and there's a bunch that I don't have, of course. Michael Nesmith's pretty much your standard ranch stash, which includes some of Shelley Blues as the sort of signature, the track I think of it most for. But my wife knows it much better. Anyway, number 35. Number 34, John Lennon's Mind Games. Of course, the title track I know, just like Imagine. You know, so I would probably look at that album. Look at Lennon. He writes a lot of great title tracks. You know, is this the album that has no? That's pretty much. I mean, Out of the Blue, Meat City. Anyway, that's why it finished so low. I mean, I had to imagine a little higher, but number 33, Love and Devotion from Carlos Santana and John McLaughlin. You know, after McLaughlin, I don't know if this came out after the second Mahavishnu record, but he wanted to work with Santana. Santana admired him. This has Billy Cobham and Jan Hammer, so it's it's got some extra players. The Mahavishnu element, the Love Supreme. I don't know if this is also, yeah, it is their interpretation of Coltrane. So yeah. Anyway, number 32, Gong. I'm not a huge Gong, but I bought this CD and then I ended up giving it to a friend of mine. Flying Teapot. It's you got more Canterbury stuff, I believe, related to Soft Machine, but a little more psychedelic. Anyway, number 31, Rick Wakeman's Six Wives of Henry VIII, which I believe most people consider to be sort of Wakeman's best solo work, but I don't have a copy of it. Although I do have the White Rock album that I don't think I showed in my vinyl A to Z. But anyway, number 31, number 30, In a Glass House from Gentle Giant, another album that I've only listened to here and there, but don't know that well. That's why it's lower. And so, I know it's a little, one of their Gentle Giant albums people have had a hard time getting into. So I don't have Three Friends on my list. I didn't go over that. There's a lot of Gentle Giant albums I didn't even include. But anyway, that's why maybe doing a redux will happen at some point down the road here. Number 29, Chick Corea's Light as a Feather. Again, Chick Corea's Return to Forever, Light as a Feather. This has a couple of the standards that he played. He played soloed. 500 Miles High and Spain, especially. Captain Marvel too. Not Captain Mouse though, but yeah, this is great. It's great stuff. I love 500 Miles High. But in terms of like who was on this, it's produced by Chick. It doesn't even say Stanley Clarke. I would think, given he was on the previous record from '72. But was it Lenny White? Was it Joe Farrell? Was it Bill? I know Bill Connors eventually joined. This doesn't tell. So this is more really a Chick Corea. I mean, you think of these songs on here, I think of for his solo career, but again, the lines are so blurry with him, just like McLaughlin is sometimes with Mahavishnu, but even more so with Chick and Return to Forever. So yeah, featuring Flora Purim and Stanley Clarke. So this you'd really consider this as opposed to a band album. This is really a solo record, just with support from the Return to Forever bass at the time, his wife Flora, and I don't know if it was his wife at the time, but he eventually was married to her, and Stanley, of course, who would be with him in Return to Forever. So let's see, number 28, Band on the Run from Paul McCartney and Wings. Again, that's kind of like the Chick Corea Return to Forever thing. It's got the title track, best known. I don't know if Junior's Farm, I can't remember. Anyway, 28. Number 27, Bruce Springsteen's Greetings from Asbury Park. The first album, I guess technically the debut album from Springsteen and the E Street Band. This is technically the E Street Band, or is it just under his name? It's just actually Bruce Springsteen. But Blinded by the Light, of course, became famous with Man for Man's version. They did the movie that was titled after with a bunch of Springsteen songs from that guy from somewhere in England. And then it also has one other track here that was covered. Spirit of the Night's a great track. Growing Up, maybe I'm thinking on the next record, but anyway, For You is another favorite. I just love that little sleeve here, but it's not his best work, but I love the early Springsteen stuff, so I mean, I'm actually surprised I put it this low. 26, Tubular Bells, Mike Oldfield, you know, checked it out from the library many years ago, known for the theme for The Exorcist, of course. It was his debut album. A lot has been said about it. It's great. I've never been blown away by him or any of his career, but I haven't spent that much time with it. So number 25 now, Photo of Ghosts from PFM, which does feature their most well-known track, Celebration. As I mentioned in the vinyl A to Z. It has some other Italian pieces, River of Life, Promenade the Puzzle. I don't know, I mean, between this and Paranamico, which one's, you know, the definitive PFM album? It's kind of split in hairs, but if it's not that one, it's this one, vice versa. So, Italian prog rock from the early 70s, you know, like Greg Lake signed them or whatever, got U.S. distribution, or European, just I'm not sure, in England. Number, let's see, 24, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, which does include the services of Rick Wakeman from Black Sabbath. Title track is my favorite on that record. Number 23, Remember the Future from Nectar. The title track, I believe, is like this epic. It's like almost 30 minutes, like 28 minutes long. Saw them at Nearfest. Saw them once again a few years ago in Minneapolis. I have one of their records, but it's not that record. But some people consider that their best record. I know Recycled. I don't know. I had it on my list this year. 22. I had mine on my Rate Music account. The second album from Bruce Springsteen, like Zeppelin did that. The first album came out, first two albums came out the same year. A bunch of bands have done that. Wild and the Innocent and the East Street Shuffle, which features Rosalita. That's to come out tonight. That's my favorite track on here. It's just a banger. The saxophone from Clarence, of course, Clarence Clemens. Kitty's Back, Wild Billy's Circus Story, Incident on 57th Street, New York City Serenade. This has got a lot of cool jazz, almost jazz rock. Listen, they had Roy Bittan and David Sanchez were on this both. He had a lot of great players in his band. It wasn't just like Danny Federici. It wasn't just Bruce. And at this point, I don't know if Steve Van Zandt was even part of the band actually, because this was '73 or whatever. So, but yeah, Wild and the Innocent's always been a favorite. I think it's a step up from Greens from Asbury Park, but they're pretty close. Because neither of them finished that high, unfortunately, because it's a long list. It's a great year. Number 21, I have the live Genesis album, Genesis Live, the first live album, which the biggest criticism about this album is it just is so short. It's only 5 songs. It does include Wash of the Skies, Return of the Giant Hogweed, Musical Box, and The Knife, of course. I forgot to mention the fact, of course, after Trespass, you had the sort of quote-unquote classic early lineup with Gabriel and when Steve Hackett and Phil Collins had joined. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty cool live album, but it suffers only from being, the quality's fine, the performances are great, it's just too short. It's only like 35 minutes long. I mean, their shows probably were longer at that time. I don't know why. I can't remember there was a reason why they made it so they could just be on one LP for production reasons. Let's see here. Number 20, that was 21. Number 20, the Queen debut album. Queen, the first Queen album, which best known for, I mentioned this in the A to Z series, Keep Yourself Alive. Son and Daughter, Seven Seas of Rye, like the early version of that. Great King Rats, another favorite. I mean, it was blues rock. They had a lot, like a Zeppelin element, but of course you had Freddie, Freddie's voice, which is different than Robert Plant. But when I got into Queen after loving Zeppelin many years before, I was always reminded of some of the Zeppelinisms. But Brian May, of course, still does have his own distinct guitar style. But so that was number 20. Number 19. Okay, so another live album, and unfortunately, I'm sad to say I don't have the compact disc or the actual booklet. I just have the jewel case. I got this at Rasputin's back in like the mid 2000s. From Nothingness to Eternity from Mahavishnu Orchestra. Here's the back of it. And it does have, the reason why I love this is because it features songs from the Lost Trident sessions, which was the stuff they did that didn't get officially released in the 70s, and the early versions of Like Children. So Trilogy, Sister Andrea and Dream, it's just fantastic stuff. Even though this is like the Genesis Live, this is only, Dream is 21 minutes, but it's only like a 30-minute, 35-minute live album. But, and I don't know if their studio versus jazz generally is better live, but the fusion stuff the debate can be made. Sometimes it's better in the studio, but anyway. That was the classic lineup of Return of Mahavishnu Orchestra and their live album from 19 to Eternity. Number 19, number 18, another fusion record, Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy. Now this does feature Bill Connors from Return to Forever. This is maybe the only record that had Bill Connors. But I know people that love him. It has the title track, Captain Senior Mouse, which is a Chick Corea staple. Theme to the mothership, after the cosmic ray. It's great. It wasn't quite as crazy as they would become, but it's sort of hybrid between what he was doing with Miles Davis. He kind of was starting to lose some of the acoustic nature and wanted to go more and more electric. And you add Bill Connors and you add Lenny White especially to the Stanley Clarke Chick Corea tandem. Flora's not on this, I don't believe, and Joe Farrell, some of those other people that were on the earlier, like Chick Corea, Return of Forever, and Chick Corea's albums, but that they're kind of finding their way in '73, almost to become where they would go. Let's see, number 18, number 17, another fusion. So I have tons of fusion on this list. Carmen's Fandangos in Space, which is like flamenco, like a Latin fusion, but some of the songs are infectious on this. Tales of Spain, the title track especially, it's flamenco, and it features John Glasscock, who played with Jethro Tull, David Allen, and Angela Allen. Carmen released one or two other records, produced by Tony Visconti. After this, it's produced by Tony Visconti, but this was kind of their peak, and most people that like Carmen, that don't know Carmen, this is the one that know Carmen, they always suggest this one first. It was this sticker say we bought in the early 2000s. Bowie producer Tony Visconti, LP with Spanish flavor. Yeah, well, it was before he was working with Bowie in '73. But anyway, yeah, I really love this record, the Carmen record, Fandangos in Space. So that's number 17. Number 16, the second album, I think it's Styx 2, from Styx 2, which features their first early hit, Lady, of course. It also includes Earl of Roseland, one of my early favorite Styx songs. You Need Love's another one that I enjoy. Little Foogie, that little movement. Father OSA. They were proggy, and they weren't doing as much of the sort of hard rock, AOR at this point. And when I was getting into Styx, this album always came up probably just because of Lady. Everyone, it's probably their second biggest song or third biggest song, Lady, and everyone thinks of Lady and this song. Dennis DeYoung trying to get that song played on the radio was talked about in documentary over and over again. So that's number 16. Number 15, top 15, Birds of Fire, the second album from Mahavishnu Orchestra, the final record with that classic lineup. Title track, Miles Beyond, which is a Miles Davis sort of reference / cover. Celestial Terrestrial Commuters. Some of these titles are a little odd, but I don't know. I've always liked it, but I've always felt like they did a little bit more with Intermountain Flame, and I'll contend, you'll find out later that there are records that some of the members did later I enjoyed even more, as I referenced earlier in this video. So, but yeah, I love this lineup. The fact you got the five guys, Rick Laird, Jan Hammer, John McLaughlin, Jerry Goodman, and Billy Cobham. And Billy Cobham's like one of my favorite drummers, anyways. So, we'll find out about that in just a minute, actually. So that was number 15. Number 14, people are going to say this is sacrilege, of course, but I have Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon. An album I still think is good, but it's been worn out by radio and by pop culture to no end. And so I don't listen to it. I don't praise it. I don't think it's bad. I definitely think it's better than The Wall and some of the other Pink Floyd records. But, I like Time. Time is my go-to if I'm taking one track. Some of the syncs, I've done the Wizard of Oz thing, are kind of neat. But as a whole, I've heard it. I've heard enough of it. The whole thing was played on classic rock radio, especially Money, overplayed, and Us and Them. Us and Them gets a little bit cheesy at times. People love that track. I know it's about the human condition and stuff, but it's a decent record. But it's been mentioned ad nauseum, just like Close to the Edge and the prog communities. So that's at number 14. Number 13, Another record which maybe could have finished a little higher. People think Goodbye Yellow Brick Road from Elton John. The one Elton John record I have has the proggiest thing he probably pretty much did, Funeral for a Friend and Love Lies Bleeding, which Scott from the Prog Corner has mentioned. People need to know more about the fact that Elton John actually auditioned for King Crimson. Didn't get the gig, but it's interesting. There's a progressive rock element to Elton John's background. But this has the title track. It has there's a couple others. There's this band, Candle in the Wind, of course, that was done for, was it Marilyn Monroe originally, and then Princess Di. Benny and the Jets is a banger. It's catchy as hell, and I haven't grown sick of that. I don't like some of the songs on Dark Side of the Moon. Yeah, it's a terrific double album. I mean, you know, Elton peaked, I think. He had other good records and a lot of good songs, but this is still his masterpiece. So even though it only finishes at number 13 for me. So number 12, Billy Cobham debut album, which I got him to sign, Spectrum. Fantastic fusion record, and arguably is as good, if not better, than any of the Mahavishnu stuff he did. Quadrant 4 is a fantastic piece. It's a banger. Searching for the Right Door, the two movements, and Spectrum. You look at the jazz fusion albums, a lot of times who's on the line, who played on this. You did have Jan Hammer, of course, Tommy Bolin, the late Tommy Bolin. Yeah, I mean, this is really good stuff, and I've seen him play a lot of it live. Ron Carter's on here, classic jazz bassist. I mean, Stratus, that's the other one. I think Greg Harris's band, or people open for him, covered that track. Yeah, this is a great record, a great debut album. I relate this to similar to the Yes guys, some of the Yes guys' debut album, like Fish Out of Water and License to Hill. It's like you have a great band, and then you release your own solo album, the debut album, which is arguably as interesting, if not better, than some of the stuff your band has done in some ways. So number 12. Number 11, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Brain Salad Surgery. This is the first ELP album I ever bought. It's got, Welcome to the show, the intro, welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, or whatever. It's like a suite. And, I forgot this came with this big book. I think that, the H.R. Geiger artwork, of course, is on this. Jerusalem is another go-to, a nice ballad. And so I think Carnival 9, that's what I'm forgetting the name of it. The Carnival 9 suite. ELP were consistent. They don't have any perfect records, but it's like they had this consistent record of putting out record after record, which just had a lot to enjoy. This is like this cool big book. It's just like this is for the sleeves for the. This is I don't know if this is a first pressing or a second pressing, but Geiger went. You have a guy like H.R. Geiger doing your artwork, you're gonna get more than just your standard release. But anyway, I'm not gonna fool around with that right now. So moving on, that's number 11. Knowing the top 10. I don't have a physical copy of this, unfortunately. Oh, I think I do, actually. Yes, I do. Hold on. All right, apologies for that. Number 10. This epic countdown. Number 10, Inner Visions from Stevie Wonder. My wife has a copy, but I actually have a copy myself. The second of that sort of 4-album run he did in the early to mid-'70s has Higher Ground. That's the most well-known track on here. But again, the fusion, the jazz, the sort of pop and the R&B and the funk, it came so well that the production on this is pristine. I've always my go-to. I love songs in the Key Life, which I'll be talking about in a couple videos, but this frequently was the one I would listen to the most when I was listening to Stevie. So, number 10. Number 9. Another record that I swear I bought on vinyl, and I don't know if I couldn't find it, but I still need to seek it out now because I can't find it. And I can't find the CD or the booklet, but I have the jewel case. Headhunters from Herbie Hancock. Very cool, funky fusion. Chameleon, Watermelon Man. This is one of the top, 5 or 10, probably 10 fusion records from the 70s for me. This is the best thing he did. He did some other stuff I enjoyed, Herbie Hancock, but this is it. And he's actually going to be here, this weekend, interesting, at the State Theater in Minneapolis. But, yeah, I mean, it's cool. I love the synthesizer work, the fat, Moogs he was using on this sucker. He was obviously listening to Return of Forever, Mahavishnu, Miles Davis, that kind. He played with Miles, I believe, so. anyway, another one of Miles' disciples went off to do great things. So, all right, so that was number 9. Number 8, I would think it would have fished a little higher, but I've stated my reason. Yes is Tales from Topographic Oceans. This is my DJ copy. I love 3 of the 4 pieces. The Ancient, a little too avant-garde. It's never clicked with me, but I actually really like the Remembering. I don't know why people don't like the Remembering. You know, Ritual is fantastic. The hook in that track, the drum part. And I always like Revealing Signs of God. I mean, this is my first Yes album. It was not a good place to start, but over time, as I appreciate Yes, and got into the other Yes records, this was when I came back to it and really did appreciate at least 3 of the 4 movements. There are parts of the Ancient I like, but as a whole, the Ancient I would chop up, and this record would be even better. But it's an ambitious record, and I appreciate a lot of what they did with it. And I know it's the first album with Alan White after Bill Bruford left, but so number 7, Yes Songs, the triple live album, which a lot of the pieces on here, of course, the interpretations are different with like Heart of the Sunrise and Close to the Edge, you know, Siberian Katru, Long Distance Runaround, Yours Is No Disgrace. And of course, there's different performances because Bruford's on part of this and Alan White's is on part of this, but it's a great live album, a top 5 live album for sure. I've been putting a lot of live albums on here. I put From Nothingness to Eternity, from Mahavishnu, and Live at Leeds, and you know the Allman Brothers, Deep Purple. You know those 5 or 6 albums are probably in like top 5 to 10 live albums ever. So the live albums were great in the early to mid 70s, or late 60s for Live at Leeds, I suppose you could say. So number 6, Lark's Tongue and Aspect, the first album with this sort of classic or second classic lineup from King Crimson when Bill Bruford had joined, and then it is Jamie Muir on percussion, all sorts, whatever that means, and David Cross on violin. So, but of course you have Fripp and John Wetton. First album with John Wetton on vocals, of course, too. The title track, the suite, the 2 parts are great. Easy Money is probably my favorite part. The talking drum is great. Book of Saturday. It's avant-garde. I remember when I was getting into prog rock in the mid-90s, this is the Crimson album they suggested to me. It's probably not the best place to start, but I can kind of understand it because, like, at least Easy Money has a really good hook to it, even though it's very dissonant. But so I you know, it's not my favorite of this era of Crimson, but sometimes I kind of think it can be. So anyway, that's why it finished as that high, number 6. Number 5, one of the best albums and the second album of the classic Renaissance lineup, with Annie Haslam and Michael Dunford and the 2 John Camp and John Tout. Ashes Are Burning. Terrific, epic title track which closes the record. Love the lead bass. Love the harmonies. Can You Understand is an awesome, memorable track. Annie sounds great. Carpet of the Sun's another banger. At the Harbor. Every track on this is great. This is a fantastic sort of symphonic folk rock album that's got a lot of prog leanings. So, Ashes Are Burning. A lot of people consider it the best Renaissance album. It's not my favorite, but again, their run was very consistent. Like Zeppelin and like ELP and some of these bands, they just had a consistent run of terrific record after terrific record. Number 4, The Who's Quadrophenia, my favorite The Who album. A double album, you know, 4 sides. Each member like had a side of their own. Rock opera, I think they sort of perfected what they were doing with Tommy. They one-upped it or two-upped it with this. A step up from, in a lot of ways, from what they did even with Who's Next, although Who's Next was supposed to be Lifehouse, but that didn't happen. My favorites are like The Real Me, Love Reign Over Me, you know, Bellboy is kind of weird, the Keith Moon vocals, but Dr. Jimmy, I believe, The Punk Meets the Godfather. Yeah, I mean, I love the synthesizer work that Townsend did on this, the dynamics, the emotion. The story is actually sympathetic. I'm not lost in the story. It's not cheesy or melodramatic, too melodramatic, really. Maybe it's a double album, so it's like Landmines Down Broadway or The Wall in some ways, where it's a bit much to get through the whole thing, but I think for the most part, they really pulled off the rock opera really well. They perfected it on Quadrophenia. The concept being the mods and the rockers, the two sides. Which one was this guy? You know, the lead character. Which one was he favoring? You know, and you know what was going to happen in his life? Is this young guy? Is he going to be safe, or is he going to be a rebel? And you know, but Sting, of course, is in the movie. I mean, I have the soundtrack actually on a different year. I don't know if it'll end up finishing on my list where it will be, but I do have that on vinyl as well. So number 3, that was number 4. Number 3, I got to be obviously kind of careful with this, but The Led Zeppelin fifth album, Houses of the Holy. You know, a favorite of many, and maybe step up in more progressive stuff. They were listening to like Yes and stuff, maybe a little bit. I love Song Remains the Same. The Ocean I've always liked. Worn out a little bit, but I still like that track. The Crunge I think is underrated. Over the Hills and Far Away is one of my favorites, probably my go-to on this album. Dancing Days is decent. It's got a lot of songs that I think it's slightly more consistent than 4. It doesn't have as many radio songs. Like the Rain song is nice. It's a very trippy hymn, like ballad. People are appreciating it more, but I mean, it's not my favorite Zeppelin album, but it's up there again. The consistency. So, number 3, number 2, going to the top 2 here. Jethro Tull's A Passion Play, which this is the first Jethro Tull album I really got into, and while I grew to love Thick as a Brick maybe slightly more, it's like 1A and 1B. The Hair That Lost Its Spectacles is hilarious. I still don't mind it. And I love the saxophone work. I know Ian doesn't play much of any flute on this, but it's terrific. I think it works. I think even though I've never heard the Lost Chateau tapes or whatever it's called, but Chateau, whatever it's called. But yeah, I've always loved this record. I was like, oh, this is really progressive. It's like Jethro Tull. It's Jethro Tull doing kind of music like Yes or whatever. The dynamics and it is theatrical. It's more theatrical, I suppose, than Thick as a Brick. But yeah, the sax is a shining moment. It's like you think, well, they didn't feature sax that much in Jethro Tull, but on this album they totally do. So it's an experiment that really worked, even though a lot of people just lean toward Thick as a Brick more. And number 1, I mean, it was splitting hairs. It used to be A Passion Play. It was number 1, but now it's Selling England by the Pound from Genesis from 1973. The peak year of prog by some people's take. It's got my favorite Genesis song, The Cinema Show. I love this album. Dancing with the Moonlit Night. The Battle of Epping Forest, as quirky and odd as that track is, I think it works. As weird as Gabriel's different vocal voicings and stuff. Firth of Fifth, of course, is classic. It's got the Steve Hackett guitar solo, and it's like Prog 101 with that track. I know what I like is a catchy number. It's the first sort of attempt at really writing a pop tune, and I love it, even though it didn't chart that high. It's the poppiest, maybe, Gabriel song they did with the Genesis Gabriel song. So I love this record to bits. I wouldn't change a thing about it, really. The production's a step up. It's very cinematic. Still kind of the tales, but my voice is cracking. The kind of fables, but a little more modern society about British society, and how the economy is weeding out the the middle class or whatever. But yeah, I love this. Well, I love this album. It's my go-to Genesis album. Even though, again, Genesis Gabriel stuff is all splitting hairs too, pretty much. So that's my big epic list from 1973. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Please leave a comment. I'd like to see your list, and we'll see you next time.